Thank you so much for having me here. Again, my name is Ciara Flowers, and I am the Assistant Director of Internship Programs at Johns Hopkins University. And as I get started, I really want to talk about what actually qualifies as an internship. According to SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, an internship is work by an intern for free or for the applicable minimum wage in exchange for exposure to and training in a particular field of work. It should be no more than 20% clerical, and it should orient the student to the organization, its culture, and work assignments. And it must include a specific learning objective. Now, how many people in here have actually interned before? Okay, wonderful. Now, how many of those internships would you say qualified as only 20% clerical? Oh, okay, that's good. So the rest of you were doing more filing than anything else then. The Baltimore College-Town Network interviewed several interns and found that interns desire the same working conditions we all do. Can anyone guess what 5 aspects of employment interns valued most? Yeah. To make a difference. Can I get one more person? Money? Let's see who's correct. You're right. Payment is in there. But they wanted meaningful work to make a difference. An accessible supervisor. The interns yearned to feel included. They wanted feedback on their performance. And of course, like was stated before, they want to be paid. Now, I understand not everyone can pay interns, but one thing we definitely want to keep in mind is with NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They listed and have highlighted a few skills here, and I'm sure all of us, as we think about the type of student or intern we want, we definitely want someone who can problem solve. But I thought was so interesting is that if you look at technical skills there at the bottom, it's only 59.8%. And I know at Hopkins, a lot of our students think technical skills should outperform anything else. But we know based on NACE that that is not the case. Though the ability to work on a team and communication skills in the written and verbal, those are valued much higher than just the technical skills. So it's definitely something we want to keep in mind when we create internships and when we're looking for the next intern. But along with that, we want to make sure that when it comes to the employer, that we don't just look at what NACE says, but we think about the employers that we do have and what our objectives are. This is just an example of Under Armour. Some of the skill sets that they hire most: accountability, creativity, innovation, collaboration. They want someone with a global perspective, someone with strategic visioning, building talent, integrity, and ethics. So although it is important to remember what NACE qualifies, we also want to make sure that we're preparing interns and students that each employer is very different and their goals, values, and skill sets, it varies depending on where you go. So we want to make sure we're preparing our student interns for the different organizations they may end up working for and with. Now, when we look at creating an effective program, we want to, if it is a paid opportunity, we want to make sure that the student is fairly compensated if it is paid. We want to look at the federal minimum wage. We want to make sure we're following the Fair Labor Standards Act, especially when it comes to unpaid internships. Are we providing the intern with the detailed job description? Now, those of you who said you had interned before, was the job description detailed? Did you really know what you were getting into before you interned? How many people can raise their hand and say, yes, I knew exactly what to expect? Right. Typically, that's not the case. But when it comes to interns, we need to make sure that we do have a detailed job description. We want to hold orientations for all that are involved, not just that student, but also the supervisor. Is the supervisor aware of how many check-ins they should do with that intern? What about the team? Have they been oriented to understand what to expect from that student and what the student will expect from them? We want to make sure we're including our intern in regular organization events. Are we including that student intern in the meetings that we're having? If we're going off-site and meeting other employers, are we including that person? We want to make sure we showcase our interns' work through presentations and expos. As stated in my bio, I do work with the In Baltimore program, and that's where we pair student interns with employers in Baltimore City. And so I'd have my students at the end of that internship, they have to create either a Prezi or PowerPoint presentation to submit it to present in front of all of their peers. And a few of the things that I make sure that they highlight, I want them to highlight the programs and projects that they've worked on at the employer. I want them to highlight the accomplishments they've achieved and also how they've overcome imposter syndrome. Many of my interns had never heard of the term imposter syndrome, and I wanted it that way because I wanted them to do a lot more legwork. We all know that when we get out into the field of work, not everything is going to be given to us, and I wanted to make sure that they knew how to research and how to look into terms that they were unfamiliar with. We want to make sure we are providing the intern with ongoing evaluation and final review. Does the supervisor need to check in with that student? Is it once a week? Is it bi-monthly? How often do we want to ensure that the supervisor is meeting with that student? What I find the most helpful is to have at least a midterm evaluation and then follow up with the final review. No student should ever be unprepared for what the supervisor thinks of them or their abilities. It should be an ongoing processing of communication. I also want to talk about the future trends. Where do we see interviews going? When I talk about going back to Under Armour, they actually weed out applicants based on their behavior-based video interviews. That's the first step to even coming on board to Under Armour. Once you have successfully uploaded your video interview, they select their best candidates, and then they do phone calls and what have you, and then they onboard them. So we're also seeing an uptick on interns being able to work remotely as well as remote supervision. When it came to my In Baltimore program, one of my students, her supervisor was based in California while that student was in Baltimore City. And so that comes along with its own interesting dynamics, but that's where we're headed to. Virtual interviews and events. Currently, in our career center, we're talking about how do we start incorporating some of the virtual technologies into our career fairs, into interviews, into one-on-one sessions. So this is the way the world is definitely moving very quickly and very fast into a new environment. And the question is, are we prepared for the 10 year, for those predictions that are out there? And to just go over a few of those predictions that may be coming our way in 2028, I just have a short video I would love to just show. Thank you so much for having me again.